Hello and welcome to Geek History Lesson. I'm Jason, not called Logan Inman.
I am Ashley Victoria Robinson. Welcome to your Mind University because you have stumbled onto the podcast where we take one character, construct, or X-Men team member from popular culture and teach you everything you need to know about them in about an hour. And today is a little bit special because we are doing a part 2 episode.
we don't do part 2s that often, but there was so much Wolverine history that we didn't even get to his time in the X-Men in part 1. So we have to do this. And also we're talking about Wolverine, aka Logan, again because there's a movie called Logan. It's actually Wolverine 3 comes out this week.
That is very, very true.
And as always, if you are just tired of us talking about Wolverine and you're like, you guys are talking about Wolverine too much, well, buckle in, but also go over to Twitter at Jawiin, Jawiin for me, and at Ashley V. Robinson. Go follow us over there, and then you can complain to us in 140 characters or less about how much we're talking too much about Wolverine. You can do all that. And you can also suggest future Geek History lessons over there, too. That's possible. Real quick, I just want to remind you that Wolverine was suggested by 2 awesome people on the interwebs, just like you, listeners of the show, Bianca Alicia and Steven Gibson. They are the ones that were like, hey, you should talk about Wolverine.
Yay.
They probably never predicted that we'd do 2 episodes.
Probably not.
Okay, so really quick recap of what we talked about in Wolverine Part 1. Okay? Wolverine is actually a boy named James Howlett with bone claws and a healing factor. Every woman Wolverine has dated has become dead because of Sabretooth. And he now wears a yellow costume, works for Canada, can't remember half of the stuff that he did in his life. And if you want more than that, then go back and listen to last week's episode, Part 1. Don't worry, we'll wait. Okay, you're back. Good.
It's kind of a long episode.
Yeah. Wow. Hey, thanks for coming back. I'm glad you went back and listened to the first one, aren't
Yeah.
you? Okay. First, let's give some love to our sponsor, Blue Apron. Now, they are a wonderful company that delivers fresh ingredients and recipes right to your front door. You know, there's that door at the beginning of your house, if you don't know what that is. Now, that makes your cooking very easy because if you're like me, cooking is long and cooking is arduous. And Blue Apron solves all that by giving you a step-by-step, easy recipe card for a meal that you can make in 40 minutes or less.
And Blue Apron's website is super easy to use and offers a ton of variety. New recipes are available every week, and recipes are not repeated within a year. 365 days of new recipes. So your plates are going to look different every time you sit down to your dinner table.
So what you want to do is you want to check out this week's Blue Apron menu, and you can get your first 3 meals free. Let me repeat that. 3 meals free.
Woo!
With free shipping by going to blueapron.com/lesson. That's LESSON. You will love how good the food feels, how good it tastes, and it will allow you to create some incredible home-cooked meals with Blue Apron, so don't wait.
You like to eat and you like to listen to Geek History lessons, so why not do both? And get a great meal for your geeky ears.
Now, there's plenty of promo codes out there, so why not choose ours and help out the Mind University? That's blueapron.com/lesson to get the amazing meals of Blue Apron. A better way to cook.
Now back to the show, students.
As I said, we ended up in the previous podcast, Wolverine. He's a superhero working for Canada's team called The Flight. He's now wearing a yellow costume, his original costume.
Cool.
Well, he meets a 40th century time traveler called Devon Cray.
Sure.
That's D''VON.
Okay.
Yeah, comic books and the names, right?
Yeah.
Now, Devon Cray invaded Canada trying to hunt fellow time traveler Cable.
Hey, you like him.
Who's Cable, Ashley?
Cable is the son of Cyclops, and he usually has a really big gun and
Shoulder
really big
pads
pockets,
that go everywhere.
And he travels through time.
Shoulder pads as big as Canada.
Yeah, sometimes with his siblings.
You know who doesn't shop at MacWeldon.com? Cable.
He's from the future.
He's a future time travel X-Man, yep. Now, Wolverine captured Cray and turned him over to Department H, the department that he was working for.
Yeah.
And James Hudson, who would later become the leader of Alpha Flight, hoped Cray's technology could empower his super agents. But Cray soon escaped and resumed tracking Cable, who were then pursued by Wolverine. Wolverine pursued both of them. Cray was defeated by Wolverine and Cable became a mercenary who Wolverine encountered during several of his select missions.
Interesting.
Some weeks later, the criminal Egghead, not the Batman villain, led superhuman mercenaries to extort funds from Canada. Now, Ashley, as a Canadian,
Yes.
are there a lot of funds to extort in Canada?
I'm going to tell you a real thing that happened 10 years ago.
Real geek history lesson.
Somebody ripped off the Canadian maple syrup preserve and ruined millions of dollars worth of product. So, yes?
I think it was Egghead.
That's a real thing that happened in
Egghead.
Quebec. Google it.
Well, maybe Egghead wanted some syrup to go on his eggs.
Maybe.
Well, he wasn't going after maple syrup. He was threatening Canada via nuclear warhead.
Well, that'll do it.
Yep. Wolverine let flight trainees against Egghead and his minions, and even though the mission was succeeded, trainee Saint Elmo died. And no, I'm not talking about the 70s TV show. I'm talking about the trainee of the flight.
Or the 80s movie.
Also, other Canadian hero Groundhog resigned, and some other, not kidding there, and some other trainees proved unsuited for such missions. James Hudson took notice of this, and he decided to divide the flight team into 3 different divisions of increasing proficiency. So the team then became Gamma Flight for the trainees, Beta Flight for the so-sos, and Alpha Flight for the best.
Beta Flight for the so-sos.
And that's basically the origin of Alpha Flight.
Yeah.
So enjoy it. Then that's the only Alpha Flight episode we'll ever do.
Request Alpha Flight.
Oh, man, that would be a dive deep. We could do an Alpha Flight episode, sure.
Yeah.
I don't know when we do it, but sure.
We'll do it when we launch our Alpha Flight miniseries.
There you
at Marvel,
go.
Who can call us anytime.
And then soon, the Hulk came to Canada. So run, Canada, get out of the way.
Canada's pretty big. Canada's bigger than the Hulk.
Okay. Well, the Canadian military mobilized to fight the Hulk, Ashley.
Yeah, they're great.
Yep. And Wolverine received orders from Romulus.
Not the Prime Minister.
Not the Prime Minister, Romulus. If you don't remember from episode 1 again, Romulus is this weird kind of retconny guy who is the chief of a bunch of wolf people who somehow has been behind every event of Wolverine's life. I don't like Romulus, hence the reason I sigh every time I mention his name. If you're going to request a Romulus episode, I can tell you that will happen never. Okay. So Wolverine received orders from Romulus to attract an unidentified party's attention by fighting the Hulk. And Wolverine had the greatest idea. He was like, ooh, you know what? You know what I'm going to do, bub?
What?
I'm going to cause a fight between the Hulk and a Wendigo.
Sure, why not?
And this is Wolverine's first appearance in the comic books, in that Incredible Hulk issue. Now, Wolverine's speed and maneuverability proved to be a match for the 2 plotting powerhouses, but after realizing Hulk was a more formidable opponent and stronger, Wolverine changed his tactics. He teamed up with the Hulk to take out the Wendigo, because the Wendigo is a horrible beast like the Sasquatch, and he deserves to die. So Hulk threw the Wendigo into a patch of trees, and then Wolverine delivered the finishing blow.
Dun dun, finish him.
Yep. The Hulk and Wolverine kept on fighting, as the Hulk had now grown so enraged that Wolverine's adamantium claws failed to penetrate the Hulk's skins.
What?
And the Hulk emerged victorious, and the Hulk actually abandoned the unconscious Wolverine in the snow, unaware of his healing factor.
Well, there you go.
Now, the detained Wolverine returned to Department X, and still slated to take the leadership of Alpha Flight, Wolverine spent weeks completing some espionage missions, even when various factors actually kind of made him trouble to his service to Department H. He kind of started questioning, why am I going over here? Why am I killing this guy? I don't know if I really like the orders you're giving me. It was also during his leadership of Alpha Flight that Wolverine was approached by Charles Xavier.
Hey, that guy.
Yes, who was attracted by Wolverine's fight with the Hulk.
He was attracted, you say?
Yes, he was. I was very attracted, Wolverine. I'm looking for hope, Wolverine. I'm the leader of Alpha Flight.
Wolverine has no hope.
Now, Charles Xavier was looking for mutants to help his students, the X-Men, to escape from the island being known as Krakoa. And Wolverine resigned on the spot from Department H to accompany Professor X, a man he'd never met before, to rescue the captured X-Men.
He's a quitter.
He is a quitter. After Krakoa was defeated, Wolverine decided to stay with the X-Men at the School for Gifted Youngsters with fellow new recruits Storm,
Hey.
Nightcrawler,
Hey.
Colossus,
Hey.
Thunderbird,
Hey.
and Banshee,
I know, all those people.
as the original members left to pursue normal lives, with the exception of Cyclops.
Yes.
Now, Logan remained with the X-Men for quite some time, and lime. He loved lime. But a rivalry grew.
But like the stone, not the fruit.
Yes. Now, a rivalry grew between him and Cyclops. And one of the reasons being that Logan, had fallen for Scott's girlfriend, who is a telekinetic telepath, who is a redhead named Jean Grey. who had just rejoined the group. Now, if you remember from Wolverine Part 1, Wolverine has a fondness from his childhood for redheads. It was actually retconned back into it because of Jean Grey, but just go with it.
Yeah.
Despite decades of hard-earned cynicism, and at first he was very skeptical of Wolverine's hope for mutant and human coexistence, Wolverine actually began to respect Charles Xavier, his ideals, his determination, and his goals, and grew to be a loyal and trusted member of the X-Men. Now, Wolverine also developed a strong friendship with fellow X-Man, Nightcrawler. Now, Ashley, I want to break the lesson really quick here, because I want to ask you a question. You are a big Nightcrawler fan.
Correct.
I want to ask you, do you think Wolverine and Nightcrawler are best friends? Because you love Nightcrawler, I want to know that. From my research, Wolverine loved Nightcrawler, and he is one of the few guys that he hung out with a lot. And I would say from Wolverine's side of the friendship, they're best friends. Do you think they're best friends? Does Nightcrawler view Wolverine as a best friend?
I think that
And who is Nightcrawler really quickly, just in case anybody doesn't know?
Nightcrawler is Kurt Wagner. He is the son of Mystique and a German diplomat, according to my headcanon.
And Azazel.
No. He is the character that Alan Cumming played in X-Men 2. He's blue. He's got a tail and he teleports.
And we have done a Geek history lesson on Nightcrawler.
Yes, and he was named Nightcrawler when he joined a circus.
The Munich Circus.
Yes. So I don't think they're best friends.
Not best friends.
People, when it's a convenient plot point, writers like to trot out that they're best friends. Like when they brought Nightcrawler back from the dead a couple years ago, like that was a big thing that he wanted to go see Wolverine. I always get the impression of it more actually from the Nightcrawler stories than from the Wolverine stories. From what I've read in the Wolverine-centric stuff, like I'd be like, he's best friends with Scott. They just don't like to call it that.
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all.
But I see them as being like very close and having a lot of respect for each other. I would say they're close friends, but I would not say they are best friends.
Interesting. Wolverine treats them as best friends. So it's interesting to see that Nightcrawler doesn't view the relationship in the same way. Run away, Logan. Run away. All right. Next, the X-Men traveled to Agarashima, Japan. And this was the first time for Wolverine since breaking with Ogun that he had actually been back to Japan. There he met Lady Mariko Yashida.
Who you may know from the movie.
That's right. She was in the second. And he aided her cousin, former X-Man Sunfire, in battling Moses Magnum, who's actually an X-Men and an Avengers villain. And although she was unable to requite his love, Wolverine fell madly in love with Lady Mariko, an heir to the extremely powerful Yakuza family in Tokyo. Initially, she was frightened by Wolverine, but then but then she was attracted to his gentle demeanor, and they both fell in love. The X-Men then departed this mission, and they were diverted to Calgary, Alberta, where they battled James Hudson, now in a costume that looked like the Canadian flag and calling himself Vindicator. And he was aided by Alpha Flight, who wanted to arrest their former would-be leader. Wolverine surrendered to the Canadian team, but somehow escaped and returned to the X-Mansion to be part of the X-Men. How, you ask? Well, he's Wolverine. Don't worry about it. Comics.
Also, don't knock that Vindicator costume. It's really cool.
I actually like the Vindicator costume. I like Alpha Flight. I wasn't knocking it.
Yeah.
I'm just saying, like, if you were friends with James Hudson and you hadn't seen him for a couple months, and then you saw him and he was dressed in any flag from head to toe, you'd be like, James, what's going on?
I wouldn't be. I mean, he's a Hudson. That's a big name in Canada. I wouldn't be surprised.
Okay. Soon after this, Wolverine and Nightcrawler sneaked into the Hellfire Club, and the Phoenix, Jean Grey, fell under Mastermind and the Hellfire's control and transformed into the Black Queen of the Hellfire Club.
Yeah.
After the X-Men battled the Hellfire Club's inner circle, Phoenix underwent another transformation into the Dark Phoenix and soared through the universe, where she devoured an entire star in one sitting and the 5 billion inhabitants of one of its planets.
Wow.
Yeah. When Phoenix returned to Earth, she threatened to kill everyone. But everyone. But Professor Xavier was able to keep the Phoenix under control and helped her will herself back to normal, or so we thought.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, it is. The X-Men were then teleported away by the Shi'ar, and they are basically an alien empire that controls a Macran crystal, and they have this alien character called the Guardian with them and stuff like that. Now, the Shi'ar empire had witnessed Dark Phoenix consuming the star during her interplanetary buffet, and the X-Men were forced to battle with the Imperial Guard over Phoenix's fate. The battle battle triggered her transformation into Dark Phoenix once more, and Phoenix understood that she would never be able to fully control the dark hunger inside her for planets, and sacrificed herself on the moon.
She's like Galactus' girlfriend.
She is.
She's like, I'm gonna eat this planet real quick.
It was after this time that Wolverine later made the first change to his costume and turned it brown and lighter brown.
My favorite costume.
Yep. And he journeyed to Canada to make things right with Alpha Flight and Department X, accompanied by his supposed best friend, Nightcrawler. We can neither confirm nor deny which way that goes. Together with Alpha Flight, they battled a Wendigo!
Hey, we know about that.
Yep. And Logan grew closer to his friends and even dared Nightcrawler to walk down the main street of Salem Center undisguised in his natural shape and skin tone.
Oh, yeah, that's a weird little story.
They then both took underage Colossus, who was under 18 at this time, to a bar. And Wolverine thus became the patron saint of underage drinking.
That is not incorrect,
Yep.
I would say. But also, he comes from a country where the drinking age is much lower.
That's true. But still, they were in America. So, after the X-Men watched a televised debate between Professor Xavier and Reverend William Stryker, they received news that Cyclops, Storm, and the Professor had died in a car accident.
Wow.
While investigating the scene of the accident, the X-Men were attacked by the Purifiers and rescued by Magneto.
Yes, the Purifiers.
Yes.
Ugh.
After capturing their attackers, the X-Men and Magneto tortured them for information and rescued Kitty Pryde, who had then been pursued by the Purifiers.
Yeah.
After arriving at Stryker's base, the X-Men and Magneto rescued Cyclops and Storm, and Magneto resuscitated them. You want me to stop that as a little
No,
line?
it's great.
Professor X was then taken to Madison Square Garden, where he was attached to a machine that, using his brain power, would kill all living mutants. Now, Ashley, I want to ask you, does any of this sound familiar to any X-Men movie you might have seen?
It sounds a little bit like the first X-Men movie when they strap Rogue to the machine.
Well, you're a little wrong on that because it should more sound like X2, as this is the story God Loves, Man Kills that is based on Chris Claremont's God Loves, Man Kills. Wait. I said excuse me here. X2, X-Men United, is based on the story that I'm telling you about. X-Men, God Loves, Man Kills. That's the storyline.
Okay.
So there you go. Because it's the machine in the second movie where Brian Cox puts Professor X in Cerebro.
I guess I don't really think about like what they're doing with Professor X because he really just needs to be incapacitated so Wolverine can save him.
And also the character of Reverend Stryker is turned into General Stryker, which I prefer General Stryker.
I would agree.
Yeah. Now, back to the story. Magneto, with his psi-shielded helmet, was able to distract the Professor enough for the X-Men to destroy the machine. And televised, Cyclops entered into a debate with Stryker about his actions, and Stryker pulled a gun, attempting to kill Kitty Pryde. But before he could fire, Stryker was shot down by a police officer. And later at the mansion, Professor Xavier admitted that he thought Magneto was right and began to accept his offer to join the X-Men until Scott Summers' Cyclops stopped him and stated that he believed in the Professor's dream and he believed that the Professor's dream would come true. That's right, Cyclops sticking it up again. We've done a Cyclops Geek History lesson.
Go listen to it.
We love him.
We do.
Okay. After investigating the return of his letters to Mariko, so Logan has been writing Mariko, his love, in Japan.
Yes, who has unrequited feelings for him.
He keeps all the letters getting returned. And Logan learned that she had been married to an abusive husband named Noboru Hideki. Logan intended to kill her husband, but was then drugged and challenged to a duel of wooden swords by Mariko's father, Lord Shigen. During the duel, Logan was soundly beaten and humiliated in front of Mariko due to a poisoning and Shigen's use of deadly pressure points. Logan then threw the sword and unsheathed his adamantium claws, only to be beaten once more and revered as an animal cast in some semblance of a form of human.
Okay.
Also, they got after him because he tried to use deadly force in a non-lethal duel.
Yes.
With this act, Logan had dishonored himself to Mariko and was cast into the Japanese streets where he was rescued by Yukio, later his close friend and sometimes lover, who also appears in the second Wolverine movie, The Wolverine.
Yes.
After being attacked by the Hand, Yukio manipulated Logan into helping her, which led to further embarrassment in front of Mariko. Upon realizing his deceit, Logan took the fight directly to Shingen. And after Yukio killed Mariko's husband, Wolverine was forced to kill Lady Mariko's father, Lord Shingen, the guy who used pressure points against him. Afterward, Mariko gave Logan the Clan Yashida Masume sword, stating that he was worthy of it. It was forged 800 years ago by the supreme swordsmith Masume, and the sacred blade represented everything that was best and most noble in the family and the samurai. And it was presented to the Lord's champion who welded it of the family. With the death of her father and her husband, Mariko was named head of Clan Yashida. Logan stayed with her, and they later announced their engagement.
Well, not so unrequited after all.
No, but before the wedding service, Viper and Green X-Men villain, part of Hydra, and Mariko's half-brother Silver Samurai poisoned the X-Men and battled Logan over for control of Clan Yashida from Mariko. At first enraged at seeing the X-Men team show up because Logan saw the new X-Men show up and Rogue was part of the team, and Rogue at that point had been a villain, and Logan was like, what the hell is this idiot doing on the team? Logan gained her respect, or gave her respect, after she saved the life of Mariko by jumping in front of a shot from Viper that had been intended for Mariko.
Way to go, Rogue.
Yep. Mariko and Logan became estranged due to the honor customs of her family, as well as the manipulations of the villain Mastermind, and Logan returned the Masamune sword to her.
Okay.
But after the X-Men defeated Mastermind, Mariko returned the honor sword to him and stated that she had been able to break her clan's criminal connections, and Mariko felt that she could not marry Wolverine until she did this. So the sword goes to Wolverine, goes back to Wolverine.
Okay.
There you go. And after that, there's some fun, X-Men adventures that happen. Like on one X-Men adventure, the X-Men were in, I'm going to mispronounce this, it's in somewhere in Germany, in Kurfürstendamm.
Sure.
Kurfürstendamm. Logan got the scent of Spider-Man in civilian's clothing and deciphered his secret identity.
Dun, dun, dun.
So he figured out that Peter Parker was Spider-Man.
Yes.
Logan also had some adventures as Patch in Japan, and he left the X-Men and then returned. And then the X-Men moved to Australia to make everybody think they were dead because it was the 80s, and Mark Silvestri had to draw the X-Men.
Yes.
When the X-Men temporarily relocated to the Australian outback, Wolverine took the runaway mutant Jubilee under his wing. Actually, who is Jubilee?
Jubilee is this cool little Asian girl with a cool yellow coat, and that's why people like her. And she's got little zappity, magic-y circle powers.
She has fireworks powers, and she wears these big goggles on her head.
She's like Boom Boom, but Asian.
There you go. So he took Jubilee under his wing after she saved his life from an attack by Lady Deathstrike and the Reavers. And Jubilee eventually became like a daughter to him, much like Kitty had been in the 80s. And while based in Australia, a man would ask Wolverine to go to the Savage Land. Ashley, what is said Savage Land?
It's a pretend Marvel island of some size.
It's actually on Antarctica.
That's sure. It's still pretend.
Yeah.
That's full of dinosaurs.
Yeah. It's like a big jungle.
Yeah.
So a man asked Wolverine to go to the Savage Land. He said there's great papaya there. And
go see Khazar, whatever.
Yep. And Wolverine went there and encountered a tribe of humans. Arriving in a lightweight plane, the tribe believed him to be a god, with the exception of Gok, the tribe's female chieftain. Now, this spelled Gahck. I'm going to assume that's Gok.
I'm going to assume she's a Klingon.
Yep. Gok challenged Wolverine to combat, and once it was established that he wasn't a god, he offered help to their hunting parties. And Logan subsequently started a relationship with Gok.
Of course he did.
When members of the tribe were captured, Wolverine discovered that a robotic Tyrannosaurus Rex, that usually happens, would attack the tribe and take their members to a secret base. There, Wolverine discovered that experiments were performed on the tribes by members and minions of Apocalypse.
What?
Yeah. After freeing himself and the captured Gok, he battled Apocalypse, though it turned out to actually be a robot of Apocalypse. And then the Apocalypse robot's lab, Logan learned that the real Apocalypse was actually the man who told him to journey to the Savage Land. And after defeating the robot, Wolverine left the Savage Land despite Gok's feelings for him.
Aw, that's rude.
Yep. So when the X-Men returned to America, Wolverine began wearing his original blue and gold uniform again. And he greatly got troubled by his lost memories. And Wolverine investigated the abandoned Weapon X facility in Canada where he had been transformed years before. There, he inadvertently activated the artificial intelligence Shiva, which had been designed to kill any rogue Team X members, which he was one.
Yes.
Wolverine also became much darker during this time as he learned that more and more of his memories were fake and memory implants.
Boo.
Wolverine again went back to Japan, filling up his frequent flyer miles to Japan Airlines. That joke didn't quite work. I'm just going to keep on moving.
Japan Air.
Where Clan Yoshida, besieged by eternal dispute, was attacking the Hand Ninjas. Silver Fox, who had been with Hydra during this time, observed the proceedings and cooperated with Matsu Toyoyaba, the Hand Leader, to poison Mariko, Wolverine's love. So this is Wolverine's love trying to poison Wolverine's other love. Faced with a slow, painful death, Mariko asked Wolverine to end her life quickly because she was been poisoned. And Wolverine schnickety-schnicketied Mariko.
Yes, it's very sad.
Yep. This changed Wolverine's character significantly. It made him even more disciplined and emotionally distant. And Wolverine then vowed to Matsuo that on each and every one of his birthdays, he would slice off a body part of himself until there was nothing of him left in honor of Mariko.
Stupid.
It's kind of ridiculous. Also, they would all heal.
Logan, that's stupid.
Yep. After his encounter with the mutant assassin Omega Red, Logan began to question the memories that he possessed, and his searches to find his true identity and memories proved fruitless. Now, Logan possessed memories of being a samurai in Japan, a mercenary operative for the CIA, and a wild man in the Canadian wilderness. And he also remembered romances with Mariko and Silver Fox, but Wolverine suffered a mental breakdown which stemmed from the deaths of Mariko and Silver Fox and Weapon X's mental tampering. Due to the extensive memory plants given to Logan through the Weapon X program, any and all of these memories could be faked and are suspect. But Logan does have one true memory of meeting Captain America in World War II while he was in the Canadian Army, which was verified as true by Captain America. But I will say that during this time, the 90s, these memories and memory implants were a crutch of the writers at the time to basically retcon anything out of Logan's life that they wanted gone.
Yes, and it is something I think that you can still see relied on to this very day.
Yes. Let's take a little break here and thank one of our lovely sponsors. I just want to say that the one thing that I think we learned over this week and the last is that Wolverine probably wears a lot of clothes. If you've been around for 100 years, you're wearing a lot of clothes.
Well, and Canada's really cold.
Yes, that too. And I can guarantee you that Wolverine probably wanted his clothes to be cool and comfortable, so I bet you that Wolverine was a customer of today's sponsor, Mack Weldon. Now, if you don't know Mack Weldon, they use smart designs and some premium fabrics to make clothes that would make any X-Man jealous. Now, Mack Weldon has a very simple site, and our listeners can actually go to mackweldon.com, that it's MackWeldon, and get 20% off their order using the promo code. We have the easiest promo code in the world, Geek.
And that's what we all are.
Very simple. Now, I want to tell you, I got this sweet little blue hoodie over there, and it let me pretend that I'm wearing one of those blue and yellow X-Men uniforms, and I swear to Apocalypse, it's the most comfortable hoodie I have ever worn. And it's because Mack Weldon says on their site, they care about comfort. And if they say it on their site, it means it's true. And they want you to also be comfortable, especially our listeners. They don't care about anybody else. They only care about our listeners.
Yes, exactly.
So if you don't like your first pair of anything you buy on there, you can keep it and they will refund you, no questions asked. So go support the awesome sponsors that help keep the show alive, just like Wolverine has been alive for over 100 years. MackWeldon.com. Get 20% off using the promo code GEEK. G-E-E-K, in case you don't know that. Geek. All right. Now, during an encounter in space with Magneto on his space station,
X-Men should not go to space,
called Avalon, Wolverine slashed Magneto with his claws. He was like, schnickety, schnickety, bub, and Magneto was like, oh, how dare you. Magneto retaliated, using his powers of the magnetic field to tear the adamantium out of Wolverine's skeleton, causing him extensive injuries. Now, these injuries overloaded Wolverine's healing factor for a time, and Logan also discovered that the claws that he believed had been a result of the Weapon X program were in fact part of his actual bone structure due to his mutation. That was a big reveal at the time in the 90s. Everybody thought that the claws were basically part of Weapon X.
Yeah. But I remember hearing about that when it happened.
Oh, yeah?
And it was like a big thing.
Fun fact, just like the death of Superman that was kind of offhandedly said by a writer, Wolverine losing his adamantium was an offhanded comment said by Peter David during one of the X-Men writers' retreats where they were like, oh, what should we do to Wolverine? And Peter David was like, Magneto should just suck out his adamantium.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, oh, but how do we do that?
With mutations.
There you go. Around this time, Professor Xavier, Beast, and Heather Hudson conducted experiments on Wolverine. These showed that Logan's mutation was actually ongoing, and whilst his healing factor and senses would accelerate, it would also cost him his humanity, for it would slowly change him into a bestial, wild animal-like creature. It also turned out that the presence of the adamantium slowed his mutation down, and his healing factor treated it like a foreign substance in a body and constantly tried to expel it.
Ugh.
As a result of these injuries from Magneto, Logan left the X-Men for a time, and he was without metal claws in the comics for several years. After this, Logan was kidnapped by Taylor Dayspring, who was calling himself Genesis, who wanted to make Wolverine one of his new Horsemen of the Apocalypse. Genesis had acquired adamantium by destroying the body of the mercenary known as Cyber. Remember him from part 1?
Hey, I do remember him.
Yes, and he had planned to recreate the bonding process used on Logan in Weapon X years ago.
He didn't yet know that literally never works.
Yep. This time, however, Logan's body rejected the adamantium and he regressed for a time to a feral-like state. Wolverine began wearing a blue do-rag over his head, and basically artists stopped drawing his nose. Yes, this is a true look. Go look at any of the issues of the Onslaught event, but this whole thing is forgotten pretty quickly, thank God. Okay. Logan was subsequently kidnapped by the would-be conqueror Apocalypse and forced to fight the savage assassin Sabretooth for the mantle of the Horseman Death, to be the Horseman Death for Apocalypse. Knowing that he might be able to resist Apocalypse's programming and that Sabretooth would actually be pretty dangerous with this, the support of Apocalypse, Logan fought and made sure that he defeated his nemesis.
Okay.
Apocalypse rebonded adamantium to Wolverine's skeleton, and Wolverine fought the X-Men ferociously in his death persona, but with the help of his teammates, he eventually broke free from Apocalypse's control and returned to the X-Men. So, Wolverine now has his metal skeleton again.
Good.
Yes.
Good.
Do you not like Bone Claw X-Men?
I don't like the look of the bone claws aesthetically. I don't think they're interesting after he's had metal claws, and I don't think they're as effective. Plus, every time you see them, somebody has to like slash them so that they break and grow back, which is gross. I don't mind them being the base for which the adamantium is laid on top of, but Wolverine should have metal claws.
Well, I will say, as a person who really got into the X-Men during this time, the Bone Claw saga was very intriguing.
No.
And it was interesting. It was just a different idea. Like, it was a very interesting storyline.
Yeah.
It was also during this time that Wolverine first learned of the Weapon Plus program, that the X was a number and not a letter, and that Captain America was one of the very first subjects.
Yes.
And
I remember that being like a really cool idea because, of course, you're like, oh, Weapon X because X-Men.
Oh, it's Grant Morrison came up with that.
Yeah.
Later on a mission with the X-Men, Wolverine and Jean were lured into a Weapon Plus satellite by the villain Zorn, and although Logan was able to access detailed files on his past, they realized that it was a trap, as this asteroid was hurtling now towards the sun. As the heat slowly began to intensify, Jean could no longer stand the pain and asked Logan to take her life with his claws. Obliging his love's last wish, Jean's death unlocked the power of the Phoenix. Thus empowered, Jean returned Wolverine and herself back to Earth as Logan slowly healed, and Wolverine greatly mourned Jean's loss, and he was not pleased that very shortly after this, Cyclops and Emma Frost began a new relationship, because he was a valued member of the X-Men at this time, and he didn't like working with them, but he still stayed with the X-Men during this time.
It's like a great panel where he literally throws Scott out of bed with Emma and through a window.
That's an Astonishing X-Men by Joss Whedon.
It's awesome.
And Jean Dine was in Grant Morrison's new X-Men in the early 2000s. And as of this publication, that Jean Grey is still dead.
Yes, correct.
Now, they've replaced her with a young time-traveling Jean Grey, but that's not the same Jean Grey.
Yes. I have so many thoughts about the time displaced Jean Grey.
Well, it's very impressive that she has now been dead probably a good 15 years.
Yeah, but not real. If they don't bring her back, they just just replace her with other Jean Greys. It
Yeah,
was like when
that's
Madeline
true.
Pryor was around.
That's true. Later on, Wolverine was ambushed by the Hand and transformed into a killing machine and outfitted with several devices, and he battled various heroes of the Marvel Universe, including the Fantastic Four, Daredevil, Iron Man, Spider-Man, and he was stabbed both Hornet and Northstar, and fought basically every Marvel hero in a storyline called Enemy of the State. And then he got better.
I like Enemy of the State.
I do too. Also, while on a mission in the Savage Land, he met the recently reformed Avengers and eventually accepted membership, as Tony Stark felt that Logan could provide a useful perspective to the team in this modern world. And that, of course, led to an event called House of M. Ashley,
Yes.
What's that?
So we decide that we're going to make Scarlet Witch more powerful than she's ever been for no reason, and she's going to say no more mutants, and there's going to be no more mutants, and everyone is going to live in a fantasy world inside their head until they realize that, and they fight their way back to reality.
Yes, and as a result of House of M, during which Scarlet Witch altered Earth's reality then restored it, Wolverine regained every single one of his original memories due to the witch attempting to give all the heroes their perfect worlds, and he was finally able to sort between what was true and what was implanted.
I actually think that's like one of the greatest things that House of M does.
Yes, yeah, actually. Wolverine remembers everything of his past. So the first thing he did is he went to visit the Silver Samurai, who at the time had served as a guard to the Prime Minister of Japan. Wolverine battled with Silver Samurai, cutting off his hand in the process, and then he visited the site of the original Weapon X program, which led to a clash with Bucky, who Bucky then revealed that he was like, I was the one that killed Itsu, your wife, and I killed your son Daken. Bucky apologized to Wolverine, telling him that he was not in control of his actions at the time. And then Wolverine began to reminisce about his wife, Itsu, and the events that led up to him meeting her. U.S. government officials then, probably under Romulus's command, sent a Shiva robot and nuke to kill Wolverine. However, Wolverine survived, and Emma Frost was able to discern that Daken, Wolverine's son, was still alive and had been manipulated into hating Wolverine. And Wolverine began his quest to locate his unknown son.
Aw, Daken.
Finally, Romulus made himself known to Wolverine by sending his own ancient memories into Wolverine's mind and inserting himself into Wolverine's memories. Now aware of the manipulator of his entire life, Logan teamed up with Deadpool to find his son, who had many similarities to his father, such as aspects of his personality, abilities, and powers. Wolverine, arranged for Daken to be shot with carbodium bullets,
Sure.
which would slow his healing factor so that Wolverine could capture him and remove Romulus's influence. However, Sebastian Shaw, leader of the Hellfire Club and once played by Kevin Bacon, abducted Daken, intending to brainwash him into servitude.
Aw.
Wolverine fought against Shaw's Hellfire Club, blocked by a psychic booby trap in Daken's mind. Shaw manipulated Professor X into triggering the trap and absorbing most of the damage, which restored Daken's memories. Both Wolverine and Daken defeated Sebastian Shaw and resolved to seek vengeance and Romulus together. But the two parted ways when Daken decided to join Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers because at the time in the Marvel Universe, Norman Osborn had control of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Yeah, I could see how if you're Wolverine, you're not too hot on that idea.
No, not really. Now, Wolverine had a bunch more adventures, including leading a new killer team of X-Force, traveling to the past with Spider-Man, and actually going to hell. I'm not making that last one up. It's a quite ridiculous story. I'm not going to repeat it here. It is really, oh man,
Yeah.
oh mama.
Most X characters wind up in hell and space.
Yes. But I really want to talk about X-Men's Schism event because
Okay.
that's very important to Wolverine. Now, with the return of Kid Omega, who is Quentin Quire and a Grant Morrison evil mutant from the new X-Men run,
Pink hair.
this set off a new wave of anti-mutant sentiment, and Wolverine and Cyclops steadily grew divided. Wolverine wished to hand Quire over to Commander Stephen Rogers of S.H.I.E.L.D., while Cyclops wanted to deal with him within the mutant community. Eventually, it got worse when Wolverine saw the idea of Cyclops raising and training teenage mutants as soldiers and only going to get them killed. Wolverine didn't like that. So he quit, and he took a number of the X-Men with him, and they left the island of Utopia, and they returned to the former home in New York, with Wolverine making it clear that Cyclops had clearly crossed the line with his actions.
Aww.
Now, Wolverine founded the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning in the former Charles Xavier School and home because the X-Men had been living on the West Coast, as I said, on the island of Utopia for a while. And Wolverine used this by spending all the money that he had amassed over 100 years. And that just goes to show you, kids, if you put a penny in a bank account in 1900, it's going to be $1 million by the year 2015.
Exactly.
Interest is a hell of a thing.
Yeah.
Now, let me ask you about this.
Okay.
I'm not a big fan of Schism because I feel just like Civil War that the characters are on the opposite side of the thing. It doesn't make much sense to me that Wolverine is making mutant soldiers. It would make more sense if Wolverine was doing that.
You mean Cyclops is making mutants?
Well, who did I say? I'm sorry.
Wolverine.
Okay. Wolverine is like, no, we should be peaceful and do all this stuff. And Cyclops is like, make soldiers, make soldiers.
I agree, but I do think that Cyclops would want to deal with a mutant problem within the community.
Yes.
I don't think he would want to go to S.H.I.E.L.D., whereas this is around the time when Wolverine becomes
in everything.
Very involved in every Avengers team, which continues to this very day. So I understand why that would be his inclination. And I also think that Scott would be the one to return to the school because that was his home longer than anyone.
He grew up there.
I don't think it would be Logan. And I hate renaming the school the Jean Grey School for Higher Learning. I hate that so much.
Okay, all right.
It should be the Charles Xavier School for Gifted Youngsters.
All right, so after that and the terrible things that Cyclops did in Avengers versus X-Men, go see our Cyclops lesson, Wolverine became killable. It's the name of the storyline.
Oh, yeah.
During a rescue mission to help S.H.I.E.L.D., Wolverine was infected with a microverse virus that shut down his healing factor. Eventually, he was captured and beaten to a pulp by Sabretooth, and the virus was revealed to have sentience, and told Logan that it would be willing to give Wolverine his healing factor back in exchange for invasion from S.H.I.E.L.D., as the organization intended to destroy the virus after Wolverine was cured. Mm-hmm. When he was finally rescued from Sabretooth, Logan became alienated his friends and stated that the Wolverine was dead. Following the loss of his healing factor, Logan started to prepare himself to face Sabretooth again and to figure out a way to get his healing factor back. He donned a suit of armor to protect himself. It's the one where it's like yellow and he has lines on a suit.
Yes.
And he left the Jean Grey School, although he still remained leader of the X-Men, and the main Avengers team. And he started working for a businessman squad of mercenaries. In reality, however, Wolverine was actually sent to these mercenaries as a double agent for S.H.I.E.L.D. in order to trace Sabretooth's whereabouts by killing one of their agents, Agent Moncton. Logan decided to rediscover his martial arts by training with Iron Fist and Shang-Chi, and through that, he was able to defeat Sabretooth. Remember, if I said in the first lesson, Sabretooth was actually first an Iron Fist villain.
Yes.
But after that, the end is near.
Oh, Wolvie. Oh.
Logan had a reunion with Mr. Fantastic, who explained to him that his entire physical structure is based on the fact that he could heal himself, and that now only using his claws, even just using his claws, could be fatal to him. Mm-hmm. He was assured that he could reactivate his healing factor, but he would need time, and Mr. Fantastic begged him to not fight until he could figure it out. But this is Logan. Come on.
Yeah.
Because a bunch of people came after Logan to kill him, some of those people were Nuke, Madam Viper, and Lady Deathstrike. And eventually Logan realized that they were all being sent after him by one man, Dr. Abraham Cornelius, one of the original Weapon X scientists. Mm-hmm. Logan traveled to Cornelius' facility in Paradise Valley, and using improvised fake claws, he killed the guards, broke into the lab, where he witnessed Dr. Cornelius experimenting on innocent people. Logan demanded to know what he was doing, and Cornelius explained that he was getting it right this time, claiming that he deserved to be known for creating something other than an unstoppable killing machine such as the Wolverine. Mm-hmm. Cornelius claimed that he was responsible for what Logan was, and that his test subjects belonged where he is, revealing that all they needed to make them perfect was adamantium. He told Logan that he had enough adamantium, but what he really needed was a healing factor for the subjects to survive. So he had created this serum called the Regan serum in his attempt to recreate Logan's healing factor. The fact is that Cornelius actually wanted to compare the Regan serum to Logan's healing factor. Part of this thing was all the reason for all the capturing and bringing Logan there.
Sure.
So Cornelius told him that he needed Logan's healing factor to save these perfect subjects. Mm-hmm. Logan then cut his hand and showed it bleeding to Cornelius. And Cornelius realized the healing factor was gone. So Cornelius, angry like a mad villain would be, he ordered a volunteer of his program, Sharp, who he had made into an ultimate fighting machine to kill Logan. Through the fight, Cornelius started the bonding process on the subjects. Wolverine sliced a tank of adamantium open, getting it all over himself, and he started to inject all of the subjects with the artificial healing factor, the serum, as I told you.
Yes.
But he decided not to give it to himself. So he saved these people, and when he could have gave himself a healing factor again. Wolvie beats Sharp and confronts Cornelius outside before the adamantium hardens. And a soldier tried to help Cornelius escape, but Logan, of course, killed him. And Logan killed Cornelius as Cornelius asked Logan, what did Logan ever do besides killing? And Logan reflected on his life as the adamantium formed all over his body and hardened as Logan died kneeling in the sunset, suffocating from no air, leaving Storm in charge of the X-Men and the entire team heartbroken when they see a hardened adamantium blob of Logan kneeling at this facility. The X-Men took Logan's body to Alberta, Canada, where a shrine was built by Forge in his honor. And only a few people knew of this shrine because they feared that someone might try to resurrect him. One of Wolverine's last requests was for Spider-Man to be given a position to teach the students at the Jean Grey School for Gifted Youngsters. I think it's a great idea. And Laura, also known as X-23, decided to carry on the mantle of Wolverine in his honor. That's the death of Wolverine. That's the end of Wolverine.
Oh, the Wolverines.
And now in the comic books, there is a time traveler wandering around called Old Man Logan, but that is not the 616 Wolverine, and we're not going to include him in the lesson.
Okay.
He's an alternate timeline Logan. He's not the 616 Logan. And of course, you can also see Logan in theaters, played by Hugh Jackman, and that is where we end the tale of the Wolverine.
Woo! That's really sad.
There you go. He's done. He's a dead man. All right, let's move on into our recommended reading.
Where Professor Jason is going to recommend a bunch of stuff you can read if you have not had enough of Wolverine. And if you go to geekhistorylesson.com/recommended reading, you can find all of our recommendations back to the very birth of this podcast. Click on that Amazon widget, get you some reading, and a little bit comes back our way.
First thing I'm going to recommend is a fun storyline where Wolverine goes throughout the entire Marvel Universe. We mentioned it earlier. Enemy of the State by Mark Millar, drawn by John Romita. It is Wolverine being mind-controlled, Wolverine being a superhero, Wolverine attacking heroes. It's a fun book.
It is.
The next one I'm going to recommend is a thing that I mentioned very briefly, and that is Astonishing Spider-Man and Wolverine. Now, this is the storyline where Spider-Man and Wolverine, who were fellow Avengers at this time, they're not fans of each other, but they get lost through time, and they spend millions of years in the past, and they're blasted. They have to figure out how to get away from the meteor that's going to destroy the dinosaur.
Yeah.
This is kind of where Spider-Man and Wolverine sort of become best friends, and I thought it was the stupidest idea ever, but it's actually a great Wolverine story. It's a fun book, and it's a book of a team-up that you wouldn't expect to work.
This is where Nightcrawler gets shunted out of the best friend role.
That's right. Well, I think Nightcrawler was dead at the time.
He was.
And lastly, I'm going to give you Death of Wolverine by Charles Soule. It's a fun... I initially was against this idea. I'm not a big fan of events that are just about things and deaths, but Charles Soule does a really good job with this story, and even though I kind of told you the ending, when you get to that end scene, it is kind of sad. It kind of pays off.
Interesting.
And I think the death of Wolverine is kind of interesting. I hope Wolverine stays dead for a while, but I have a feeling they're going to bring him back this year.
They're going to bring him back right after Logan. They're going to bring him back in the next few months.
So there you go. Let's move on into discussion.
Where we're going to discuss stuff about Wolverine.
Yes. So we had a big two-parter of Wolverine, Ashley.
We sure did.
The X-Men are all about saving humans, right?
Uh-huh.
Ashley, how do you deal, or how do you combine the fact that, the X-Men are sort of a pacifist team, right? They don't kill people.
Sort of, yeah.
Wolverine kills hundreds of henchmen over his adventures, even during the X-Men. How do you reconcile them being on the same team?
You have to go with the greater good argument. You have to assume that everyone Wolverine kills is a very bad guy who deserves to be killed, who otherwise would have caused the deaths of innocents. But I think that is, one of the reasons for a lot of the tension that he feels with Cyclops and even with Professor X, who he has a really great paternal relationship with. Like, they're at odds and they don't always agree on what to do or the methodology. But when you put it that way and when you lay all the cards out on the table, it's a bit anachronistic, for sure.
It is. It's a little bit of two opposites, right?
Yeah, but I think people also forgive it because, like, Wolverine is really freaking cool.
Yeah.
And Wolverine is the best in a rated R story. Like, when I go see a Wolverine movie, which is why I'm not a fan of the first two solo adventures, like, some people better get killed.
Yep.
In a big, bad, impressive way.
He has insanely razor-sharp claws.
And there should be blood in the snow.
Yep.
Like, come on.
Yep. Another question I have for you, and this happened, we talked more about this in part 2 of Wolverine. Do you like Wolverine being on the Avengers teams?
I don't.
Okay, why?
I understand intellectually why you need to do it. I understand that Wolverine is one of the most...
If not the biggest.
If not the biggest, I mean, maybe up there with Spider-Man, Marvel characters. So... Nobody gave a flying poop about the Avengers until the movies came out.
No.
Nobody. They were very contained to, like, nerd realm. They'd never broken through the way Spider-Man, Wolverine...
Or the X-Men had.
So I understand why Brian Michael Bendis comes along and is like, why don't we put this insanely popular character...
On the main
team of our universe that, by the way, nobody's reading. Like, I totally get that. It's the same reason why... I don't like X-Men in big Marvel crossover events. I think the X-Men need to be in a self-contained universe.
I agree.
I actually think they shouldn't cross over with any Marvel characters ever because it's the argument that everyone makes now. Like, how can you tell the difference between a mutant and Spider-Man? You don't know who they are. You don't know how they got their powers. So how do you know who to hate?
And what difference does it make if one was born with these powers and one just got them through a radiation accident?
Right. Like, if they're both going to save your life, shut up.
It doesn't make any difference.
Exactly.
Like, you should hate Spider-Man as equally as much as you hate the X-Men.
Right. So in the Marvel multiverse, there should be a planet where it's only the X-Men and no one else.
I think it should be a universe. Like, it should just be on an alternate Earth.
Yeah.
And okay, so Logan is, of course, the big movie with Hugh Jackman. It's rumored to be the final Hugh Jackman movie. I doubt it.
As if. He's going to play Wolverine until he dies.
Well, I'm going to throw this out there. You got to recast Wolverine.
Yeah.
Who do you recast as? Who is the next Wolverine? Do you have a choice out there? Is there an idea out there for you'd love to see play that part? Hugh Jackman's choice is Tom Hardy.
Right. Tom Hardy, I think, is a fabulous choice because he's a little shorter. He's thick.
Yeah.
Hugh Jackman is not. He's thicker now. But when Hugh Jackman was at his peak attractiveness and was first cast as Wolverine, he was not very thick.
I also think with Tom Hardy, we would see more of the animalistic Wolverine.
I agree.
Because Hugh Jackman's Wolverine is very human.
He is. He's very contained. I think that, too, is a factor of the kind of movies that we hadn't hit superhero mania on film yet, so he had to be more relatable. I believe that Tom Hardy maybe could go crazy and beat me up right now. So that's an attractive feature to have in somebody who's going to play Wolverine.
Okay.
I know everybody's saying Scott Eastwood, and if that happens, I'm going to stop going to X-Men movies. But it's tough. I think when they'll recast eventually because even if they keep him on in like an old man Logan capacity, you're gonna want young, sexy Wolverine. It'll
be just like Batman. Eventually, you have to recast.
I think we're probably going to get an unknown who can make his name on it. Because
I agree.
I know Hugh Jackman was in like Kate and Leopold and he had like a Tony and whatever, but Hugh Jackman made his career playing Wolverine. It's just like you cast an unknown to play James Bond so that they can give it their all.
Cool. All right, and that's it for the discussion. Let's move on into the teaching tweet.
Where in 140 characters or less, Professor Jason is going to sum up everything he just taught us about Wolverine.
Wolverine. He's the hairiest assassin ninja you'll ever meet. Schnick, schnick. Watch it, bub.
Oh, man.
There you go. He's very hairy.
By the way, if you want more Wolverine goodness, Jason wrote a song called What's Wolverine Say that you can go find on the internet.
You can find it on youtube.com/Jawiin, Jawiin. It's What's Wolverine Say. It's a fun song.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, that's it for our 2-part Wolverine Mania.
Woo! You did such a good job.
Oh, man. Wolverine was so... I'm glad I climbed to the top of Wolverine Mountain.
Mount Wolverine?
Yeah.
Mount Logan?
Yeah. And don't forget, I still want to see those tweets about the Pride of Illegitimate Skunk Bears t-shirts.
Oh, God.
I still want to see those.
I want those so bad.
This is not over.
What?
Yeah, we're not done with Wolverine.
What?
We're not.
The hell you say?
We're going to have a very special episode where we talk about the Logan movie, give our thoughts about it. then compare it to the Old Man Logan storyline.
Oh.
And we're going to have a very special guest on to help us do that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so don't forget, make sure you want to hear that episode. So make sure you subscribe and download us on SoundCloud, Stitcher, and iTunes. And if you go over to iTunes, please, please, please leave us a rating and a review on iTunes. It makes a big deal. It makes us not have to send Weapon X after you.
True.
And also, if you leave us a review, we're going to read it on the show, just like this one from the Saint Paws, who says, I love movies, TV, and comics, and this gives me such a great in-depth look into it. Thanks for helping me geek out each week. You're welcome, the St. Paws.
Oh, and thank you so much for your review.
Awesome. And if you want to suggest a future geek history lesson, just like our awesome TAs, where can they do that, Ashley?
You can do that at facebook.com/geekhistorylesson or geekhistorylesson.com. There's a bunch of ways to be in contact in both those places.
Thanks again to Bianca Alicia and Steven Gibson. They are the awesome people that suggested Wolverine. You can be cool like them. Get on over there and do that.
Yeah.
You can find us on Twitter at Jawiin, Jawiin, and for Ashley at Ashley V. Robinson. Come over there, tell us. I am Jason Too Hairy for Canada Inman.
I am Ashley Victoria Robinson. There's some really hairy men in Canada. Professor Jason, please dismiss the class.
Thanks for listening, all you bubs. Remember, every one of you are part of my pride of skunk bears. Thanks for listening.